Rishi Sunak, thank you so much and welcome to Bloomberg.
Good morning.
Look, it's been a bit of an odd week. A lot of the focus is on AI. We'll talk about it in a second, but it's really Donald Trump that dominated the agenda. How would you deal with him if you were still prime minister?
Well, obviously, it was welcome that we seem to have reached an agreement, or that we appear to have reached an agreement on Greenland yesterday, and Mark is to be commended for some skillful diplomacy. But obviously, the process of getting to that agreement has clearly damaged trust amongst allies, long-standing allies with deep friendship and partnership. That's been the very unsettling thing about the last few days.
Is Prime Minister Starmer doing it the right way? We keep on hearing from people that maybe are closer to Donald Trump that if you show a bit of teeth, he backs away quicker.
We in the UK, of course, the United States is our closest and oldest ally in that regard. And I think it is important, to make sure that we remain aligned with the US where we can. But this was something which clearly was unacceptable. And the Prime Minister was right to say that it was unacceptable and be firm on that. And I think that, look, the diplomacy over the last few days has, it appears, led us to a better place than we were a few days ago. But you're also not wrong. It is important when lines are crossed that countries are able to demonstrate that strength, that they will stand up for what they believe in, stand up for their values and their interests. And the world we're in, this new world order, requires a bit more hard power. Whether we like it or not, there's no point moaning about it. We have to adjust to that, and we have to have that hard power, invest in it, and then be prepared to use it to protect our values and our interests.
Do you think European leaders and business feel pushed around? And does it mean that actually the nature of the relationship just has, it has changed forever?
I think trust is an incredibly important commodity when it comes to geopolitics and relationships, and it's something that is built up over time. And the damage that we've seen to trust in the last few days is obviously very sad for someone who believes strongly in the transatlantic alliance. And the frustrating thing is, my colleagues in Europe have been engaging with the US, who were right to focus on Arctic security. Of course, that's an increasing concern that we all should be investing more in and paying more attention to. And the Europeans and the Danes were very open to the types of arrangements that we're now, seem to be part of the deal. We could have got to that place without all of the drama of the last few days and the damage to trust that it's done, and people then feeling that they have been pushed around and bullied, which is obviously very damaging for long-term relations.
Is Keir Starmer right in focusing now on China?
I think, look, we're living in a world where the old world order is gone. China is a credible technological, military and economic counterweight rival to the US. We've also seen the rise in global swing states, if you call them that, like the Gulf states and India. This multipolar world is one in which Britain has to find its way. I'm always in favor of engagement. I think that's an important thing. But we have to be clear that, China also, does things that are damaging to our values and interests. And as we were just discussing, we as a country working with allies need to be prepared to stand up for those, where our interests and values are threatened, and seek to engage with countries where we can find common ground.
When you look at the UK, what should the government actually do to try and put the City of London back at the forefront of deal making?
Look, I started my career in financial services. It's a great strength for the UK. It's a great asset as an industry, and as we look to drive more growth, it's going to have to, in part, come from this industry. And actually, being here this week, talking to leaders, they see the strengths in the UK. I think the key thing in the UK is we can't be complacent. We have a world-leading financial sector, but the world isn't standing still. You've seen very strong deregulation in the US, and it's not just there. New global financial centers, we talked about, the Gulf states, Asia are rising. They all want to come and take our business, take our place. So we have to be responsive to that. We have to make sure that we remain the most competitive place, not just in Europe, but globally competitive, because we have a global financial center.
Is there one policy that you would change right now that would make a difference?
Rather than say a bit of policy, the thing I would urge people to do is to move faster. I think we have to recognize that the pace of change that we are seeing, whether it's geopolitically, whether it's technologically, that's only accelerating. And whether you're an organization or a CEO, whether you're a country and a political leader, you have to just move far faster than you might have thought you could have, or how we used to do this. The world is changing too quickly. If we don't want to be left behind, if we want to be competitive, if we want to develop those hard power assets, whether it's economic strength or technological strength, we just have to move quicker. So rather than a specific policy, it's a mindset of more radicalism and more urgency.
You hear in Davos actually a lot of questions about reform. Nigel Farage is here. We've seen a number of defections from the Tories to reform, which means that there's a kind of like political momentum. I mean, what's happening?
Yeah, look, the UK has obviously been through a pretty volatile time politically over the last few years, if you see what's happened in different elections. So that degree of volatility we haven't seen in British politics for a very long time. So, I would caution anyone who thinks they can predict the result of the next election some years hence. And what I'd actually say is, I think under Kemi's leadership, the Conservatives are making it crystal clear that they're the only party that is fiscally responsible. And in a time where, look, you talk on your programme about rising sovereign bond yields around the world, and in Europe, actually a party that is going to be honest with the country about some of the challenges we face, take the difficult decisions in order to have a strong fiscal foundation, focus on growth, is something that I think differentiates them both from the Labour Party historically, but also from Reform, who haven't demonstrated that same, I'd say, fiscal responsibility.
I mean, the perception is, are you expecting more defections to Reform? The perception
it's always disappointing when I'm a Conservative. And it's disappointing when former colleagues decide to go elsewhere. But as I said, I think actually under Kemi's leadership now, you're seeing very strong momentum, and particularly on this issue of the economy, which is front and centre. She's done a great job of making it clear that the Conservatives are the party that can take the economy forward. Reform can't offer that type of leadership. And you saw that in the recent budget, which raised taxes, raised welfare spending. Reform and Nigel Farage had very little to say about that. It was Kemi who was making the argument that was the wrong direction for the country, and she's spot on.
What's your take on AI? So a lot of the focus is on AI. Have you played a role with Microsoft and Anthropic? Like, how far ahead or behind are they?
Yeah, no, I think the interesting thing, there's a lot of talk about AI and the race to AGI.
Yes.
US and China in this great race to develop general intelligence. I think the more interesting race is who's going to adopt and use this technology the fastest. And history tells us you don't need to be the country that invents the technology to be the country that benefits the most from it.
As long as it's safe.
Of course, as long as it's safe. And that's why when I was Prime Minister, we held a summit to focus on this issue. We developed a security institute for AI that is understanding the risks it poses. But we're so early in getting the benefits of something that is going to change every aspect of our lives, whether it's economically, the delivery of public services, healthcare, education. Our entire society is going to be reshaped by this, I think, for the better. Of course, we need guardrails and responsible development. But the focus, as we were discussing earlier, should be about pace, and it should be about radicalism. We're all looking for ways to drive growth in our countries, ways to make the state work better for our citizens. It's a great frustration, and not just in the UK, but in lots of European countries. This technological development of AI will give political leaders the tool to do that for their citizens, to make their lives better, to deliver growth and prosperity. So they've got to seize it with urgency and radicalism.
I know President Trump and also a lot of the big U.S. tech companies are frustrated by the fact that they get regulated, they think over-regulated in EU. Does the EU also step up that regulation because they're at loggerheads?
Well, from a UK perspective, I can tell you, what I focused on in the job, and that was to make sure that we maintain our innovation ecosystem, right? It's a great strength of the UK. We have fantastic research universities. We have a great venture capital ecosystem. I mean, more venture capital into the UK than France and Germany combined, I always like to say. And particularly when it comes to AI, the legacy of what Demis has done in DeepMind has spawned an entire set of companies and people in that industry. And we've got to maintain that advantage. So having a nimble approach to regulation, which we did under my leadership, and I'm glad the new government has continued with that. There's been no top-down oppressive regulation of AI. We should be biased towards innovation at this moment, whilst of course keeping an eye on the risks that are developing. And the AI Security Institute in the UK, I think, is world leading in doing that and sharing that expertise around the world. So it's also becoming a soft power asset for us as well.
Rishi Sunak, thank you so much for joining us.